thank you for inviting me.
I was just saying this, I've been wondering your thoughts on a lot of different things. Before we get to them, though, me and a few of the guys who got to meet you in Calgary were wondering, your X account, you're posting, we feel like we're getting to see Martin post a lot. Like, has something changed on your end, or are you just trying to find different ways to put some of your thoughts out there? Or maybe you're just having more fun with just like interacting with social media. I can't figure it out. I thought, well, who better to ask than Martin himself?
No, I brought in a guy to basically handle that, and he's taking a lot of the stuff that I do and put it on, and then some of it I do directly, but if it's something new. But we've had interesting problems. We've had some people creating accounts and pretending to be me, and that's what it's done is forced me to basically establish accounts virtually everywhere. There was somebody on Telegram and answering questions. I said, it's not me. I don't know what the heck's going on here, and I'm not even sure why they do it. If they're trying to steer people into a certain stock or something so they can sell it, or, by the way, give me some money to manage, or I really don't know. But I spoke to, some other people. I talked to Sarah. She said, her podcast is being imitated too. I mean, I don't know. I guess this is a new thing. I'm not sure. Am I talking to the real, honest to God, SMP?
You are talking to the real, honest to God, Sean Newman podcast. Yes, you are, Martin.
Okay.
Well, I was curious. Okay, so Trump comes out with a tweet calling Russia a paper tiger, saying, NATO, you guys all go have fun. We're going to sell you all these weapons. Don't worry about it. I'm like, I was almost like taken a little bit aback. I'm like, holy crap, we're gonna have war with Russia. But that's maybe me just sitting here as a layman, and I'm like, what do you think of Trump's his tweet on Truth Social, and then just everything with Russia right now?
Well,
where do you think this is heading? I know where you think it's heading, but did you see that coming? And what does that give you? You got the email to Congress saying like, stop this.
My concern is the unintended consequences. What Trump did, knowing the neocons intimately as I do, unfortunately, but calling Russia a paper tiger, Ukraine can take all the territory and go get some. This is basically what the neocons are telling the Europeans. So he's, I think, being sarcastic insofar as, yeah, go ahead, this is what you all think. We'll give you all the weapons and go have a nice time. I think he's a little bit more realistic than that. I mean, I did get a text message from somebody close to him and said, look, peace negotiations are still on the table. The problem is Europe. And they're in the palm of these neocons. And as I've said, NATO is the retirement home for neocons. And from Putin's perspective, I would have to be extremely careful or cautious about any peace deal. Because these neocons, I don't care what he agrees to. They just want to destroy Russia. Lindsey Graham, as I said when I was up there at your place, when I shook hands with John McCain, I felt like I needed a shower afterwards. I mean, I don't, it's hard to get into their head because it's so deranged. I understood, all this hatred of Russia was from the 50s, McCarthy and communism, and then you had Khrushchev, we will bury you, all right? But Khrushchev was, an honest-to-God, real believer in communism. He really thought that communism would defeat capitalism and it was a better system. I mean, he really believed that. So it wasn't that we will bury you for an economic conquest or something. It was philosophical. And then my concern is these people, I know Russia, I think, 1,000 times better than these neocons. When Khrushchev did the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he had to back down, what happened? There was a coup. He was thrown out because it was an embarrassment to Russia, and Brezhnev took place. And these neocons, they just believe their own shit, really. They think that sanctions, if we put sanctions on Russia, and I'm not exaggerating, this is what I've actually heard, that the people will rise up, overthrow their government. We will free them. From what I don't know, and we'll bring liberty and justice, as if we even have that, to Russia, and they act as if the Russian people will give them a ticker tape parade. You can look on YouTube at Tony Blair's apology for Iraq. He basically says the same thing. We thought we were freeing them from Saddam, and we didn't realize we were subjecting them to more sectarian violence. Saddam, Assad, and Gaddafi. Yes, dictators, but necessary. Why? Because the Middle East is tribal. It's not a country. The people in Iraq do not see themselves as Iraqis first. They see themselves as Sunni, Shiite, Kurd. Same thing in everywhere you go. We drew those borders when we carved up the Ottoman Empire. Okay? They didn't create them. So they're arbitrary. And so you did need dictators in place to prevent them from killing each other, really. That was the whole issue. You remove those, and then look what you got. ISIS and all kinds of crazy stuff. The shackles were off, and they were free to go kill each other. And so this idea of sanctions, it has never worked even once. All right? We put sanctions on Cuba in 1960. They are still there. All right? You can't buy Cuban cigars in the United States. Iran, we put sanctions on them when they had the revolution in 79. Still there. Didn't overthrow the government. It doesn't matter how many times they fail. They keep the same nonsense going. It's like communism and socialism. This is the way. Show me one time where it has ever worked, please. And they can't. But they ignore that. It's just this philosophy. I don't know what you call it. As I've said, I was in D.C. when you had the whole Russian, revolution, the coup, and then you had Gorbachev stand up, and Reagan wanted to go meet him. They couldn't call him a communist then. So what did they say? You can never trust a Russian. That showed me that it didn't matter what Russia was. They just hate Russians. I guess it's just they grew up with this enemy being communist or something. And okay, fine, communism fell all by itself. And I think they're just pissed off they didn't get to shoot anybody. I don't know. But they have not changed their mind. So that just goes from they hate communists to they just hate Russians. So honestly, if I'm Putin, I'm looking at this, and I don't care what you do, what sanctions, what you give back, you give this territory, that it doesn't matter. We ended up creating the whole Ukrainian war, not Putin. All right, I got the tapes. They're on my site. You can look at them. They took them down on YouTube. But John McCain standing up at Maidan, and he's saying, "We're with you. This is about you and nobody else. This is your quest for peace." Really, Then there was the tape that got leaked, the phone call that got leaked about Victoria Nuland. F the EU. She stuck in. She handpicked the government. And an unelected government is what started the Civil War. Then they had elections afterwards, fine. And Zelensky has imprisoned everybody that was, stood up against them in politics. So he's no different than what they tried to do against Trump, or Brazil against Bolsonaro, France against, Marine Le Pen. They're doing the same thing now in Romania. It's a standard thing. Imprison your opponent so he can't run against you. That's democracy. We live in just a world of total bullshit. It's ridiculous. And the press keeps doing this. If you see an article on Ukraine, and it's propaganda when it starts out, unprovoked Putin invasion of Ukraine. Unprovoked, really. You talk about rewriting history. I got those tapes. It was, in the news. Come on, We started the whole war. There were, major articles on it. They called them terrorists because they wanted to separate. Then there was the Minsk agreement that was supposed to allow them to separate on a vote. Everybody signed it. And then Merkel actually told the press, to my shock, well, we never intended to honor it. We were just buying time for Ukraine to build an army to start basically World War III. But we're the democracy. We wear the white hats, it's, I don't know. I just get sick of it. The lies are just too many.
Well, I know, if I go back through all of our conversations, we've been talking about this now since I first met you. We've been talking about this Russia-Ukraine conflict, World War III, and I think the hope of Trump being elected was he was going to come in. What did he say? In 24 hours, I'll have a peace deal, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly now we sit here where he's going, I think you can take back some land. Now, whether he believes that, whether he's just trying to push on different people and the neocons and everything, regardless, that isn't what I thought was going to happen when he was elected. Right. I thought talks would begin. And I realized there's different factions at play that never want to see peace between the U.S. and Russia, among other places. I guess that just surprised me. Did it surprise you to see Trump come out and I don't know. You're in so much of these conversations. I just, on this side, when that got sent to me, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Well, it's a shock, yes, but at the same time, I know his style, and it is sarcastic. But I also know what he said is totally unrealistic. But that is what the neocons and NATO keeps telling everybody. NATO claims they have 3.4 million troops against Russia's 1.5. They can literally walk into Russia. Putin will fall to his knees, beg for his life, and he'll never push a nuke because he knows it will blow back on them. This is the bullshit that I hear. All right, and that 3.4 million includes you, I hate to tell you. That's Canadians being drafted and sent over, and Americans. But this is what NATO keeps saying. And NATO, like I said, it's a retirement home for neocons. It should have been shut down. I mean, I've been screaming that in Capitol Hill. I just posted because I sent an email off again. I said, what the hell's going on here? And I did get a response and says, listen, but there's only 10 of us here in Congress, and we fully agree with you 100%. Get the hell out of NATO. I said they're going to start a false flag. The Polish thing with the drones, that was a false flag. I've spoken to people from other countries, and they said there was absolutely no drones whatsoever that flew from Russia into Poland. And now they're, drones are everywhere, but they're not doing anything. I guess they're just flying around and having a good time. I don't know. Taking pictures for, the latest magazine or something. I don't know. I mean, Denmark is now issued a decree that nobody's allowed to have drones and flying them around. Look, we don't even know. I was up in New Jersey when we had all those drones supposedly flying around. And I went outside, and there was one that flew over, my daughter's house at green lights. It wasn't really that far up. I mean, it was maybe a few hundred feet above the buildings, but it wasn't secret. It had green lights so you could see it. What happened to all of those? Where'd they come from? Then you had people, it was China sending them in from a ship offshore, What was the purpose and what was going on? Who knows? I think that was a false flag again. They were trying to get something out of it, but nothing really happened. But I think they're doing the same routine in Europe now with all these. Everybody's now suddenly seeing drones everywhere. I guess that's good enough reason to start World War III. They sent a drone over my house. Let's go get it. I don't know. But everything that Trump did say is exactly what the neocons are saying. That Russia is on the verge of collapse because of their wonderful sanctions that they have imposed. So it is a paper tiger. Everything Trump said is exactly what the neocons are saying. Right down the line. Which makes me think that this was really sarcastic. Yeah, this is everything you people saying. He can get back all his land. Really? They've lost 1.8 million, and that info comes directly from Ukraine, not from Russia. All right? And take more? I mean, this is, delusional. So I have to say that is more sarcastic. I mean, even if you're saying it's realistic and NATO is going to send in troops, then how many millions are you going to kill to get that extra piece of territory? For what? I mean, the Donbass, they're Russians. They've been living there for hundreds of years. And I hate to tell you, but one of the biggest debates inside Moscow is who's really Russian. Khrushchev is the one that drew the borders. He's the one that rebuilt Kiev after World War II. He lived there on the borders. Brezhnev, his successor, was born in the Donbass. Stalin was from Georgia. So you can see what I'm saying, that the debate is who's really a Russian. If Khrushchev and Brezhnev and the whole Cuban Missile Crisis, well, then it wasn't with Russia, it was with Ukraine then, right? It's, who's on first? It's like the old, Abbott and Costello, routine. But, so I think we have to be realistic. Europe, I mean, I posted the email that I sent. I said, Europe will not survive, period. And what's happening here is economically Europe is toast. You have UK and France finance ministers hinting they may need an IMF bailout. And Carney wants to mimic the EU. I mean,
our interim parliamentary financial officer, am I saying that right? Regardless, it's something along that lines. Came out, if we keep going this way, we're toast. Basically, I'm paraphrasing what he said.
Yeah.
But one of the words he used was stupefying. He almost didn't have words. If we keep going this way, and that's Canada. And what are we aligning ourselves with? Europe, not with the U.S., but Europe.
Look, it's Europe is the most regulated pretend democracy, I think, on the planet. And I mean, just look at what Starmer's doing. Digital IDs on your phone so that if you said, I hate this, they can lock you up for 22 months. It's, there is zero respect for human rights anymore over there. Free speech is done, gone. Why? Because they know they are losing power. I mean, as you know, when they were creating the euro, they came to me, I sat down, said, okay, fine, this is how we create a currency. And I said, you got to consolidate the debt. And Herman Kohl, opposed that, and he took Germany into the euro. Didn't allow the German people to vote. He admitted before he died that he would have lost 7-3. So I was told back then, I said, this is not going to work. All right, it's going to collapse. And I was told, we just have to get the euro in. We'll worry about the debt issue later. It wasn't that they were saying I was wrong, and they weren't saying they disagreed or anything like that. They just said, we just got to get the euro in first, and we'll worry about the debt later. And here we are 26 years later, not there. And people have to understand, As a trader, I can pick up the phone and say, buy me $10 billion worth of U.S. Treasuries. No problem. I cannot do that with Europe. In Europe, it's as if the euro doesn't exist. Do I want Germany? Do I want Italy? Do I want France? You're making the same decision as if the currencies are still there. I mean, that's what I warned them about. Now, when Greece got into trouble in 2010, what did the traders do? They made a lot of money shorting Greece. Who's next? Oh, Spain. You create a contagion. France is the worst economic position of Europe, and it's the second largest economy. If they falter, what will happen? Because there is no consolidation of the debt, and this is the real problem. All right? Every bank has to have a cornucopia, basically, of everybody's debt. Like, politically correct, do I have enough of this one, enough of that one, whatever. Equality, you know. So what will happen is that traders will then look at the balance sheets. Oh, who's got the most French debt if they're going to default? And you're going to short that bank. So you're looking at undermining the entire banking system. And then the pension system. None of it is sustainable. This is what I warned them about in 98. Went in one ear and out the other. We just have to get the euro in. It was all about creating the bureaucracy. That's it. Power. Do they really give a shit about the country, about the people? No. You just interestingly had Merz out of Germany criticize the EU. I was shocked. They're going into areas that they shouldn't be in because all the migrants and stuff. It was supposed to be an economic union. That's why, back with Maggie Thatcher, I said, look, and she knew, she was very smart. She said, this is a backdoor to federalizing Europe. And, she listened to me and kept the euro, the pound out of the euro. They staged a coup to get rid of her. And then they put the pound into the ERM and preparing to go into the euro. And that was John Major. And then Soros attacked. Because they overvalued the pound. Oh, to look strong, So what happens? Then they have to call me because I'm the one that was telling Thatcher. Well, what do you think? I said, listen, if you got maybe 10 billion pounds for, a week, maybe you'll be able to hold it. Oh, that's too much. I said, well, devalue. And I was told we can't devalue because John Major ran, during the election and promised not to devalue the pound. So I wrote a paragraph. I gave it back to him. I said, okay, fine. Say you're going to allow the pound to float to seek its own level. Oh, brilliant. It's the same thing. Instead of you doing it, you're saying the market's doing it. But I mean, this is politicians, and so with this whole thing with the euro and Russia, and they want more because the European Union is crumbling. And then throughout history, when a state is in danger of collapse, what do? They try to find an external enemy. All right? What did Carney do for the election? Oh, it's Trump, Trump, Trump. All right? Didn't talk about the domestic issues in Canada, though, did he?
No, he did not.
You always do this. It's a political strategy, and Europe is doing the same thing that Carney did. All right? It's Putin, Putin, Putin. So then you don't pay attention to the fact that maybe your pension's evaporating, all this stuff's just going to disappear. So NATO, somebody said, they're probably going to, they just added, you just added NATO to the list of people who would love to assassinate you. But, they should have been shut down. They're owning an organization that promotes war, not peace. I saw the internal memos when all the money was going to climate change, and it was like, how do we remain relevant to keep the money going? And you can only remain relevant by saying Putin wants to invade Europe. Why? He's not Khrushchev. He's not communist. There's no philosophical issue to do so. Europe has nothing. All right? They got to buy their energy from Russia. All right? When Japan went into Manchuria, it went in for assets, for natural resources. There's got to be an economic incentive. All right? Khrushchev was just philosophical. Even if Alexander the Great said, let's go invade this country. Why? Well, I don't like him. What am I getting at it? Oh, nothing. They would have said, have a nice time, go on yourself, There's got to be some sort of an economic benefit. And Putin has no intention of invading Europe. He walks into France, and like I've said before, the French are just going to say, are you going to pay our pensions now? That's it. There's nothing there for him to gain. This is not an economic conquest or something of that nature. So the only reason for war between Russia and Europe is that they want to be an aggressor. That's it. They want to capture all the assets, and that's really what is at stake here. If you think this is about Ukraine, you're believing the bullshit. This has got nothing to do with Ukraine, really. Ukraine has just been a pawn. You had Boris Johnson hop on the plane constantly you're not allowed to sign. He made the front page of Norwegian press publicly saying Britain's in a proxy war with Russia. So you had China, their foreign minister met with Kalis. I put that on my blog. And she was, she's a ruthless neocon. And saying that, you have to step away from Russia, get them to pull out, all this other kind of nonsense. And he said right to her face, he said, we have no intention of allowing Russia to lose. Why? And he said right to her face, we know we would be next. So this idea that you can take Russia, it's a paper tiger, all this, it's total BS. Trump at least has to know that. All right? I spoke to some close people, I guess it was maybe a year, maybe time goes by so fast. It could have been up to a year and a half ago, whatever. But and they were being told that we would be at war with China, not Russia. And at that time, I said, listen, you're being fed a bunch of BS, and it's a diversion. Pay attention to Russia. That's where it's at. They didn't believe me. Maybe it took a few months, 3-6 months after that. I got calls back, we think you're right. Listen, I look at it from every which angle. I got sources everywhere. You're being bullshitted. You know, and just as Carney said, oh, Trump, 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 they were telling Congress, China, China, China. So you don't pay attention to what they're doing in Russia, in Europe. I mean, I just know the game. You know, I've just seen it for too long. And it's always the same stupid tactic. It's the diversion. Oh, look at the bird over there. So you don't pay attention to what the gun pointed right to your face.
You know, when we've, I always bring this up with you, but, you know, I always come back to 2032. And the first time I had you on, you were talking, well, before that, the first time I ever heard you talk, you were talking about 2032, and I was just scratching my head. And then I point to one of the conversations we've had, Martin, where I said, how do we get to 2032? And you kind of chuckled. You were like, I don't know. Like, it could be something so small. And then, you know, Charlie Kirk gets shot. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, there's something. You know, like on the whole list of like problems that all countries are having with just civil unrest, whether it's, you know, the UK, you know, you can't say anything on free speech, you're arrested for that. You know, it looks like there's protests almost daily, you know, here in Canada, the cost of living, a whole bunch of different things going on. The judicial system being like ridiculous. You know, a guy breaks into a house with a crossbow. The guy defends his, you know, with a kitchen knife, and he's going to jail. And like, you just like, none of this is making sense. And there's more stories, and it just goes on and on and on. Charlie Kirk was a big one. You know, like when he gets shot like that, basically on live television, because I mean, there's so many cameras pointed in his direction. You know, it's almost instantaneous on the social media of a very graphic man being killed right in front of everyone's eyes. When you saw that, where does your brain go?
That I can say this. There is some evidence that's being disputed that there was a second shooter. Look, these things, I believe, was intentional, and it wasn't for something that he said. And they always need a lone gunman. They did that with, you know, JFK, and now there's other stuff coming out. I have one of the declassified memos where one guy in the CIA told his family that they took out JFK, told his family that he was in fear of his own life because of that, because he objected, and he was shot to death maybe 3 weeks later. The attempted assassination of Trump. They killed the guy so that, just like Oswald, because you can't have a trial, right? If you had put Lee Harvey Oswald on the stand, everything else is going to come out. He's got to be dead. Trump got dead. All right. I question what is going to happen. 9/11. You know, when they created Homeland Security, they said, oh, well, some agencies had information, but they didn't share it. The first World Trade Center guys drew the towers with planes going into them on the wall before they knew it was there. They arrested her. They arrested their attorney, Lynn Stewart, for passing notes back and forth with them. Right? They knew, but why stop it? They get more power. Suddenly you can't send more than $3,000 to somebody without double checking who you are. You got to take off your shoes to get on a plane. All these restrictions, every event of this nature, they benefit from. This particular killing of Kirk, look, it has been strategic insofar as dividing the country. You had even Obama out there, saying, "Oh, this is all, Trump is dividing the country," as if he hasn't. It gets to be really absurd, but the whole object of this, and this is why Trump is suddenly afterwards. He hasn't articulated this, but I can tell you, there are other people that believe what I just said. That this was a deliberate act to divide the country. All of a sudden, afterwards, what is he doing? Looking at charges against Soros, who funds a lot of stuff. Antifa, calling it an a terrorist organization. These are all funds that have been orchestrated to divide the country. You had, basically with the Jewish protests and the tents they were all paid for by a lot of this stuff that came out of various different groups like this. They fund this sort of stuff. The object is to divide the country, and this is what is really behind these globalists. That if they can, Soros has even come out and said the number one problem is the United States. It's got to be, basically taken apart. Why? Because they do not want independent sovereignty. Just look at what the EU has done. And then look up Merch's comment that he just made. It was more than just economics. Now it was social. You're going to take X amount of migrants. You're going to do this. They're overriding the cultures of all the members. I was on the phone with Romania. They were instructed now by the EU to accept another 100,000 migrants. Why? Don't speak the language, no skills. For what purpose? They will not state it publicly. They think that they can draft these people for war with Russia. Here's a gun. Go over there. But they're not going to fight for Europe. This is stupid. I've warned them. I said, there's a lesson from history about this. The Roman Emperor Valens, Attila the Hun was coming across. The Goths said, "Can we please come in?" Okay, he let him in, trained them, thought he would be able to use them as an army against Attila the Hun. Once they learned all the Roman tactics, what did they do? Oh, thank you. They turned around, waged a war on Rome, and killed him personally in battle. I mean, come on. And you're doing it again with the same theory? We're going to turn all these migrants into soldiers and give them a gun? God help you. They're not going to fight for you. They're already over there burning churches and stuff like this. I mean, it's a completely different culture. It just, I don't know, the people that make these decisions don't know their history about anything. That's a good idea,
You once told me it wasn't civil war, but certainly civil unrest. It kind of spreads. It doesn't know borders. right?
Right.
It's like an idea can spread. When you look at the UK and everything going on there, do you think that's where it starts and then spreads out from there? Because everything now you got Starmer coming out talking about digital ID and that everybody in order to work in the UK is going to need it. And now I think I've seen that there's a petition with, is it 2 million signatures saying we don't want this?
Yeah.
And you go like, okay, so like you look directly at that small chunk of land, how many people are on top of each other, and all the civil unrest that has been going on there since, and you get your fearless leader coming out saying the way we're going to fix this is digital ID.
Yeah, it's more power for them. It's always the same answer. I've worked with governments for 50 years. And basically what I have learned, when I was younger, I was optimistic. I thought, gee, if I contributed, maybe I could help the country. Then you realize you can't. If I walk in and say, look, if we don't do this, 25 million people will die tomorrow. They will say, well, maybe you're right, but maybe you're wrong. They would rather the 25 million people die. And then vote for me, I'll get the guy that did it. This is the way politics works. If I want to run for Congress and I say to you, vote for me because I saved your job, you're going to look at me and say, well, how do I know I would have lost it? It's better you lose it and then say, vote for me, I'll get the guy that did it. This is politics. All right? I've learned they will not ever do anything proactive, period. Not going to happen. It's...
So then it comes back to the create the conditions to make a bad politician do the right thing. How do you create, in your time, how do the conditions get created so that they'll do the right thing?
They won't. That's what 2032 is about. Just what Starmer's doing, etc. All right. Each step, instead of saying, gee, maybe I'm doing something wrong, let me look at it. Look at California. All these people leaving. Instead of saying, gee, why are they leaving? Maybe we should change our policies. Let's punish them. Let's put an exit tax. It's never, ever about them. That's why I say in government, and they're all the same, no matter what country you're going to, there are no mirrors. All right? We are always the problem. Never them. And the academics, the only one I ever met that thought out of the box was Milton Friedman. I was speaking in Chicago. I think it was at the Market Technicians Conference, and he came to listen to me. And I was talking about capital flows and foreign exchange and all this. And when I was done, he came up and he says, that was the best speech I ever heard. And I'm like, excuse me? And then he said, you're doing what I just dreamed about. And I hadn't realized at that time, but he had written in 1953 his theory of a floating exchange rate and how it would put checks and balances on government, which is what I was talking about, the capital flows. And, they will go to a country that's confident and leave ones that won't. And that's what he meant. What I was doing was what he just dreamed about in 1953. Floating exchange rate didn't come to 71. But he was the only one that thought out of the box. The rest of them are all, Keynes, it's really Marxism. Okay, we won't take their property, but we'll still manipulate them, raise and lower taxes or interest rates. It's all, we're the problem. Every one of these economic theories, just look at them. We are the problem. How can government manipulate us to achieve their goals? They don't look at government. The sad state of affairs. But it's human nature. A guy starts a business and he wants to expand it, maybe even turn it into, several places, and then maybe franchise it, okay? He is building his business. That those same ideas and emotions, all right, that I just described from somebody privately, put them in government. They do the same thing. Oh, let's expand. I need more power. Let's get more control this way. It's always the same. It's human nature. You just put them in government and they're going to expand it. So, to me, 2032, in republics, all right, we should have the right to direct vote. Kind of like the 2 million people objecting in UK. If we all can buy from Amazon securely, why can't we vote securely? And we should be asked those questions. Shall we go to war with Russia? Yes or no? We should make the decisions. Not some guy, smoking a cigar and getting it, his pockets lined by other people in a back room. But this is what they do. Does Carney really represent the Canadian people?
No.
Zelensky. I mean, we had offices with staff in Kiev and in Donetsk on both sides. All right? They do not believe Zelensky was fairly elected. They think the election was rigged. Surprise, surprise. I mean, Ukraine's listed as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. You stuck him in there, and then what do? They suspend elections. And he just even recently came out and said, I'll leave when the war's done. I was told, and you can look it on my blog back then, I warned, when he was elected, I said, all my sources are saying this is the guy that was handpicked to create World War III. I believe he was a neo-Nazi. He married a Christian girl. His children are baptized. He pretended to be a Christian just like Soros. After become president, suddenly he's Jewish. Why? Oh, well, if I'm Jewish, I couldn't have been a neo-Nazi. It's a cover-up. I got tapes. You can look on my site of him standing up as a comedian before president, joking about confiscating the assets of Russians and Jews. People I know from Israel say he is no Jew. It's all facade. That's what you're looking at. And he's a dictator. Then you take Ursula. The way the EU was structured, it was deliberately structured to prevent democracy. Google her. Look on Wikipedia. She has never stood for an election for anything. Not even class clown. Nothing. All right? Yet, she has the audacity to call Putin a dictator. And Zelensky's not a dictator, right? Suspend elections. But, she's never been elected to anything. All right? The whole EU upper echelon. Nobody's elected. You don't even know who some of these people are. They hide in the shadows. So, I can tell you, they basically take the justification or Aristotle, Plato, and look, back then you can read that they were anti-democracy. Why? Because they felt that the people were too stupid, and you had to have some expertise to be the head of state. So they used that. See, the people are too stupid, so we should eliminate democracy because they don't know, as they say, their ass from a hole in the ground. And this is it. This is their philosophy. And just look at the EU. You have no ability to vote these people even out of office. Carney, was there a preliminary election? Did the people vote that he should be representing? No. He's just appointed and stuck in. RFK in the United States, I warned him. They're not going to let you on a Democratic ticket. Oh, come on. How could they do that? I said, what I'm hearing, nobody's going to be allowed on the ticket to challenge Biden. They didn't let him on. Then he had some deep state person saying, oh, he can win by independence. I said, I'm sorry, my computer says you don't stand a prayer in hell of winning. And if you want to make a difference, join Trump. Only after New York wouldn't allow him on the ticket there to be an independent candidate, he finally saw what I said and joined Trump. Wouldn't allow him. There was nobody allowed to challenge Biden. So it was the same thing you just got. We don't want the people to make a decision. Screw them. They're too stupid to understand. This is the attitudes of some of these people, I'm telling you. So Europe, it will break up. Why? Because you have no right to eliminate the people that are supposed to be running the government. When government fails to understand that they are the servants of the people, the only possible solution is civil unrest.
And civil unrest can play out in a lot of different ways. Or does it?
Look, it doesn't always have to be violent. You had an attempted coup in Russia. And Yeltsin stood on the tank and said, don't fire on your own people. They didn't. The coup failed. Okay, so most of the time it does turn upon the military or the police. Right now in Britain, you're seeing these judges and the police arresting people for, one guy, you asked him if he can you speak English? That's a hate crime. Really?
The guy walking around in Britain with a British flag, right?
Yeah.
And coming out of Britain, there's so many, Martin. The guy calling the one person a muppet, and you're like, really? This is where we're at? But this is where we're at. I mean, when I go back over all of our conversations here in Canada, the ostrich farm, could you have ever predicted that would cause such a stir? I come from a farming background. You talk about them coming and culling animals. There is farmers in this area, they'll talk about mad cow. They'll talk about elk coming in and them quarantining and just done. And yet it's ostriches, of all things. And I'm not against what's happening. Like, to me, I'm just like, I come back to our conversations. I'm like, oh, how it'll happen? You go, I don't know how it'll happen. I'm just telling you that this is the way it's supposed to play out, or this is what the computer says. And I'm like, okay. And the more and more it goes along, what's caused a lot of civil unrest here in Canada? It's been an ostrich farm. And them sending upwards of 100 officers to put down a whole bunch of birds who are now, from what I can tell, healthy, right? Because they've gotten through whatever hit them. Meanwhile, you got a kid missing in about 5 hours south, 7 hours south, something like that, and they could probably go help with the 100 officers to go save a child. Instead, they're sitting and working 24/7 to make life extremely difficult on a group of farmers who don't want to lose their animals. And that has become national news.
Are they saying what the backstory is?
On the farm?
Yeah, about COVID and stuff like that?
As far as the farm, or as far as the news?
The news about the ostriches. Because one of the rumors are that they're immune to COVID and stuff like that, and they've been testing to get something that the pharmaceutical company does not want.
Well, it's possible.
Look,
I know that talking to the farmers, they have been very much of like, we could learn from these birds. They survive something, go and start testing them and learning from them.
Look, when I was in Japan, a guy came in and he said he wanted us to look at creating a company for him. I said, well, I really don't get into vol. I said, why are you coming to me? He had a scooter with a magnetic engine that he created. And I asked him, he said, keep it, ride it around. And I asked, why are you coming to me? He said he went to all the major auto industries, and they all basically offered him like $50 million or something. And he says, but nobody wants to produce it. Why? Because it changes the industry. Oil industry, a lot of these things gone, and it's not electric cars. It was all magnetic. So I mean, this is what you get. I mean, they try to, they wanted to buy it from him to stick it on a shelf so it's never seen again. That's what I've heard about the ostriches.
The ostriches. So when you look at the ostriches, you go, they're going to find something out they don't want to have out there.
Right.
So let's go cull them all. There's a legal precedent in, with livestock to go in and do just that. So let's just use that means and away we go. And on the flip side, what's starting to, as more people stand firm of like, no, we're not allowing this to happen, it's exposing that more and more.
Yeah, it's just, what's the big deal about killing ostriches? Why? You're not getting bird flu and stuff. I mean, come on, what's the issue? Why do you have to kill them? Ask why.
You're coming to Regina. You're coming to Saskatchewan here in October.
Yep.
Me, I looked at the list. I'm like, holy mac, Martin's coming back. What is it about Western Canada? Now, I have to, thank you again for coming to the Cornerstone Forum back in May in Calgary. But now you're coming to Saskatchewan, and people didn't know that. I'll post the link where you can grab tickets for it. But you're coming back to Western Canada. You're coming to Saskatchewan this time. What is it about Western Canada that you think, you're circling on your calendar going, this is important?
Because Canada will split up. And it will be West versus East. I've said that 20 years ago. And it's, as I said, was at your place. When they created the Federal Reserve, you had 12 branches. Why? Because you have regional different economies and cash flows. When they were raising interest rates in Toronto because of the real estate, so the central bank was raising real estate because of the real estate, raising interest rates because of the real estate speculation. back in the 80s, they're putting farmers and miners into bankruptcy in the West. One size does not fit all. And that was adopted by Roosevelt to sell the New Deal. You can look at a newspaper, or newspaper.com or whatever, call up a newspaper from the 1920s. Every Federal Reserve branch had a different interest rate. It was to manage the regional capital flows. All right, and Roosevelt wanted to create his New Deal, and he had to do it by force. So he usurped all the power of the Federal Reserve and stuck it in Washington. All right, Canada followed suit. This is the problem. It may be one country, but the West is a different economy from the East. The same way as, you have, Midwest produces commodities. I mean, that's why the commodity exchange ended up in Chicago. For cattle and beef and grain. I mean, that's where it was traded, because that's where it was. All right, New York was the financial center. All of this was just created for socialism, to get it through. And it's tearing everything apart. So the West will, separate from the East. I mean, it's inevitable. And then you have Carney, who was one of the authors of Net Zero. And you really think he's changed his stripes?
No.
Look, these people they believe this nonsense. It's like it's a religion. You can't talk to them. I mean, you can go on my site. We've got daily temperatures back to, 1800 from New York City. Just look at the chart. Is there global warming? It does not show it. Simple as that. The climate has always changed. There's been warming periods, there's been cooling periods. When you get the warming periods, that's when empires rise. You get the cooling periods, that's when empires fall. Crops fail, diseases take place. You got crazy people. I mean, look, you even got Bill Gates. We'll put particles up to block the sun. Okay, and then you get 2 or 3 volcanoes, and guess what? You just killed humankind and most of the things on the planet because no sun can get through now? I mean, these, I don't know. Here in Florida, I mean, we get a red tide, which is in the Gulf, which is like a bacteria, and a politician, vote for me, I'll make sure there's no red tide. This is all created by farmers and their chemicals. I just Googled it. What was the first one? 1642, reported by the Spanish. I think that was before there were farmers or chemicals in Florida. But I don't know. Do we have the world's worst possible people in these positions? They're just idiots. I mean, I've got, clips from Marcus Vetter's movie on the forum. Here's Bolsonaro, which he didn't put in the film, going, these people are all crazy. They put him in jail for 27 years because why? Because they don't like what he says. The left is always historically more violent. Why? Because they present themselves as the victims. They have been victimized by the right. The right tends to be more of the people that defend against traditional values, the status quo, whatever. They don't start the revolutions. All revolutions come from the left. You know, every one of them. Look, historic example. Just compare the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Why did the American Revolution lead to a stable republic and France did not? Okay, they're in their fifth republic. Very simple. The French, it was a leftist movement. They started guillotining everybody that had, 2 cents more than the other guy, confiscated all the property from the Catholic Church, executed priests. It was a leftist agenda. Kill everybody who's got more than me. All right? It never was able to be a stable republic. U.S. didn't do that. It was about liberty from Britain. That was it. Okay, it wasn't a class warfare thing. In France, it was utter class warfare. And then you see what the net result was. When you get into this leftist thing, you're dividing everybody. I hate him because he's got more than me. You don't work as a country anymore. It's done. The more you separate that, the whole purpose of civilization, all right, civil, okay, is that you have a court, the court is unbiased, and it settles all disputes, so we settle them civilly. When there is no more rule of law, you can no longer trust the government, all that's out the window. No government has ever been able to stand when the rule of law collapses. It's anarchy then, completely. I mean, these are simple facts from history.
Well, and wouldn't you agree the rule of law is people have lost trust? I just speak for Canada. You watch things coming out of the judicial system across the country. People don't trust it anymore.
No. Same thing in the United States. They use the law to go after Trump. The judge that gets picked miraculously, his daughter's on Camilla's, promotion team. I mean, come on. I mean, look at France. They go after Marine Le Pen, going after Bolsonaro. I mean, this is the hallmark of what we're going into 2032. All these governments will fail. They have lost the right and the dignity to even be in charge. You can't be in charge, you're not civil anymore. That's it. Civilization is when everybody comes together because it's more beneficial to be together. It collapses when you're dividing all the groups and then it's no longer together. Simple as that. It comes together and it goes back and forth. We go from civilization to suburban. Then we go from suburban back to to urbanization. It goes back and forth cyclically throughout history. When Rome fell, you went into serfdom. Why? Okay, because there was no longer a centralized government to protect you. So you went to a guy who had a castle. I will work for you. You protect me. Okay, that's what serfdom was. A threat came, you all ran behind the curtain, the walls of the castle. Because there was no longer a centralized government to provide that, to protect the people. When that happens, it's gone.
You think we're going back into a serfdom then?
No, but you will end up breaking up, yes. I don't see serfdom as an issue. I mean, even like with slavery, free the slaves. You have to understand, even people like Jefferson, who was more or less felt everybody had human rights. You can't just say, okay, fine, I'll leave. You're free. Where are they going to get a job? There was no Starbucks. You know, if you look at it, the vast majority of the slaves, when freed, stayed where they were. So now they got paid. All right. The economy was 70% agrarian. There wasn't, a place really per se. Industrial revolution is really just taking place. 100 years later, fine. You want to be in agriculture, dropped to, with the combustion engine, agriculture then dropped down to about 3%. But even in the Great Depression, what made it so great was that 40% of the population were still working on farms. And when you ended up with a dust bowl, and didn't matter, you couldn't grow anything, that's why unemployment went to 25%. It wasn't the factories, it was agriculture. By 1980, the agricultural job was down to 3%. So it's always a transition. Economies are always maturing and growing in different ways. Now we have AI taking place that, will further expand the economy in different ways as well.
If you're looking at, like one of the guiding principles of the Cornerstone Forum is trying to navigate a troubled world, right? Like just trying to figure out ways, like 2032 has become this kind of like far off, not that far off anymore, but that far off like point of like, okay, there's going to be turmoil between here and there. How do we navigate that? When you're talking about individual people starting to realize, or maybe they've known this for a long time, there's going to be a lot of problems coming. And they're already here in many senses.
Yeah.
Where do you look to when people are trying to navigate this, of like things to pay attention to or places to, you're worried about your money? Like where do you focus them to look at and pay attention to, or even to maybe explore?
Well, I think, basically what you're looking at is, that's why gold's been going up. People, you have some of the gold only crowd that think that, only gold's going to go up and everything else goes down. No. I've said many times. All right. So you see the stock market going up and gold. All right. And you'll see the dollar rise as well. All right. It's capital flows. People trying to get out of Europe. Some are going into, some of the big institutions, they go into the stocks. Because at least they get a dividend. They don't get a dividend from gold. All right. Gold, it's interesting, although it's up making new highs. We don't see the people's clamoring and frothing at the mouth for gold. It's not like it was in 1980, lines out the doors and stuff like that. A lot of people are still more into the NVIDIA stocks, stuff like that. You get a transition. So for the individual, I think Europe is the biggest danger, and your risk there in Canada with Carney, if he attempts to do the same things that Europe does. So keep an eye on that. Europe is trying to push through a CBDC by October. I think more realistically by January, but their end goal here is they'll cancel the currency, all paper currency, and force you into a digital currency so that when the first bullet is shot, you can't get any money out. They will clamp down. They will most likely, I just did a piece on the private blog about it, but, in World War I and World War II, they put restrictions on gold. I would expect Canada may end up, if Carney tries to follow Europe, pay attention to that. Europe will, you already have Spain declaring you can't take out more than 3,000 euros out of your account without government permission. So each step, they're moving faster and faster closer to totalitarianism. And that is their solution because they know the economy's going against them. And so Europe will go to the CBDCs. When the first bullet goes, they're going to put all kinds of clamps down, so you can't get any money out. They'll probably even shut down Bitcoin over there. They will not allow competition. And like I said, they from a European standpoint, maybe look at gold stocks. Gold stocks at least continued to trade during World War I and II. So even when you couldn't get the gold, you could do the stock. So I would expect some more of the Europeans maybe to go into that area. But for the individual, I think, some gold coins, things of that nature, is getting some money off the grid and neutral. That's why central banks have been, mainly China's been acquiring that, because after, the Biden administration took Russia out of the SWIFT, what happened was that sent off a red flag to everybody else. And then you had Blinken even threaten China, if you help Russia, we'll do the same to you. And they said, oh, really? So they started dumping U.S. debt and moving the gold. And they set up BRICS. It's not about a gold-backed currency. It's just that they moved to gold because they were the largest holder of U.S. debt. They had 10%. And then if you go to war with China, or you think they're going to pay, they'll default on it. So they're not stupid. China started dumping U.S. debt and moving to gold. Not anybody else's debt. They don't want euro either, or Canadian. They're moving to gold because it's neutral. They don't care. At that point in time, it doesn't matter who wins the war. You just want to be neutral. Tangible assets end up surviving. Even the German hyperinflation, when they created a new currency in 1925, it was backed by real estate. So those are the things that survive.
So look to things that survive.
Yeah, you don't want government debt. Forget that. Get the hell out of that shit. Look, I mean, if General Motors went bust and you own their debt, you still get something back. It goes to auction and they sell the assets. If a government goes bust, you get nothing back. It's totally unsecured. Zero. You can buy the bonds on eBay. They look nice framed up.